Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 5000 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 5000. Enjoy.
But you see, to me, this place seems more like the land of handouts. Well, that all changes. I'm here now, and I get all the opportunities. I will have the opportunity to put to sleep your beloved Daniel Bryan. I will be the man that defangs the Viper, Randy Orton. And I will emasculate and decimate AJ Styles.
Hello, and welcome back to the A Show with Justin and Meelz. I am your host, Justin, with my other host, Meelz, on the other line. What's going on, Meelz?
Yo, I'm here. I've just inhaled the salad. I feel replenished a little bit. I'm here. I'm good. The rosters have been shaken up. I'm here to talk about it. I'm very excited for what's going on and moving forward. So let's do it.
We're all shaken up. All of us are shaken up. We had an excellent WrestleMania week. We had 3 straight weeks of WrestleMania content. I want to thank everybody for listening. I think last week's show, it was kind of like I don't want to say we were adversarial towards each other. It was a very heated episode, I'll say.
It was fine. I mean, we've done worse, I think. But you know what? You know what? I'm just going to leave it at that. You know what? Because anything I say that comes out of my head and through my brain without the filter is pure stupidity.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I wouldn't say you're stupid. I will say that I appreciate and I respect your opinion. And that's why this show works so well, because we don't let anything slide on either end. And I think that's how people really fuck with this show. Just as far as anything goes, like it's anything goes, but we're also very respectful and we try and at least come to a resolution. So hopefully if we have any arguments to today, we'll be able to solve it in as equally a quick of a manner.
Listen, easily.
But yeah, let's get into this very stacked week. This has been a very crazy month for pro wrestling, just in general, but mainly for the WWE this week. We haven't had any big movement on New Japan or ROH or anything like that. But we have, of course, a shakeup, but we also have some other news this week, as well as our thoughts on the best NXT takeovers, which I think is going to be very hotly contested. And I think that's where we're really going to get heated. But let's get into the No Holds Barred segment. And this is just breaking news. It's still very early here. Today, like in California, and it's super early, not super early, but it's early afternoon in New York. But a couple of hours ago, it was announced that Bruno Sammartino has passed away.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Just the man that defined an era of wrestling. Before there was Hulkamania, there was essentially Bruno Sammartino's era of professional wrestling in the WWF. I'll honestly say I don't know much about the run of Bruno Sammartino. I know it was very long, the longest reigning WWE champion of all time at this point. Just, I don't think there's anybody in any sort of generation moving forward that would even contest the rank of his lane. But the man was a hero to plenty of people, and especially in New York City, where it was the WWF market. He really was king. And you know what? I'm glad that in sort of the latter part of his career, he got over sort of the issues he had with Vince McMahon Jr., the current Vince McMahon, and was able to be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was a huge moment just for wrestling, period. And I think someone said this on Twitter today. Like, he was New York. He is New York, He is wrestling, and he's had some tremendous feuds and tremendous matches throughout his career, and really just one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I think that's just without question. He's one of the greatest of all time. Hall of Famer. Just a big tragedy. And this one is a really big one for everyone because of just how many people he's touched and how many lives he's touched for, just doing this sport that we all love in pro wrestling. So our heart goes out to his family and anyone else who's mourning about his death today. R.I.P. Bruno, a real legend. Real fucking legend. Real legend,
man. Shit, man. Came over from Italy to New York, made a name for himself, became WWF champion. This shit is the American dream. So R.I.P. Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah. R.I.P. Well, another thing that I want to talk about is the greatest Royal Rumble. That card is starting to get a little bit more clear, even as the time goes on. We've had a lot of matches confirmed for this week, even within the madness of the Superstar Shakeup. We have a 10-match card right now, and this is a card that's rivaling WrestleMania in terms of length at this point. So you have the greatest Royal Rumble match, which is a 50-man Royal Rumble. Oh my God!
I can't even. I can't. I can't already.
Even if you cut the entrances down to 30 seconds to a minute, this is still going to be an hour-long match.
Yeah, it's insane. It's at some point in this match, and not say it's probably going to happen, there could be at least 49 people in a wrestling ring. To me, This is insane to me. Like, blows my mind. Do they make the ring bigger because of the Royal Rumble match? What do they do? I mean, it's insane. But this greatest Royal Rumble ever card, is it the greatest Royal Rumble ever? WWE greatest Royal Rumble.
It's possible. I don't know if it'll be a better Rumble than the one from January, which I thought was like a top 5 Rumble to me. Yeah. But this could be a pretty good Rumble. I mean, everyone's going to be in it, So I think it'll be really cool. And I forgot to mention this. The show actually airs next Friday, and that will be at 12 p.m. Eastern, I believe, and 9 a.m. on Pacific time here. So I'll be waking up to pro wrestling. How exciting!
This card. You know what? Let's run through the card first because I have questions. But let's run through the card.
Run through it. So the ones that we know, Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns in a steel cage match, which is getting quite a bit of build on TV right now. And this is for the Universal Championship. A big rematch. It'll be the third match, and the second within a month. Seth Rollins versus Finn Balor versus The Miz versus Samoa Joe for the Intercontinental Championship, which is now a very weird match because 2 of the people in that match are on SmackDown. AJ Styles versus Shinsuke Nakamura was just announced yesterday after SmackDown went off the air. And that is for the WWE Championship. You have Jeff Hardy versus Jinder Mahal for the United States Championship. And this is another SmackDown versus Raw match.
Listen, we could still see the Intercontinental Championship and the United States Championship switch shows, which makes this the show very, very intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the most intriguing parts about the mid-card or upper mid-card matches is that these actually have brand specific and implications as far as who will win these matches. I do think that one of these titles will switch hands, though. I really do think that'll happen.
If I have anything to say about this, I'm saying both titles switch hands. One goes to the U.S. title. It's going to be way more confusing than it was this past week with the shakeup. Yeah. I'm saying the United States Championship likely goes to
Gender.
It goes back to Raw, and the Intercontinental Championship goes back to SmackDown. So
I'd love Joe with it. I think that just slots him immediately, and we'll get to this when we talk about the shakeup. But I really like Joe because it immediately makes him not the top heel, but it makes him at least one of the top 3 heels on that show next to Miz, and I think that's a good place for him.
Well, you already know who I want to come out Intercontinental Champion.
I just think that he has something. If they're not doing we'll get to this. We'll get in a second. Yeah. We also have Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy versus Cesaro and Sheamus the Bar, and yet another match that has brand specific implications. But I do think that that's going to stay on Raw. You also have the Bludgeon Brothers versus the Usos for the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. You have Cedric Alexander versus the winner of a gauntlet match that will be decided next week on 205 Live. And then as far as the special attraction matches, you have John Cena versus Triple H. And one match that we have to talk about because it is one of the most confusing and curious cases of someone's booking and their placement in the company, Rusev versus The Undertaker in a casket match, which was not Rusev versus Undertaker in a casket match like 3 or 4 days ago. It was originally, or it was Rusev versus The Undertaker first. Then Lana did some TMZ shit that basically called The Undertaker old. And then the match got changed.
You know what's crazy though? I don't think I heard her say old. Like, I was listening for it. I think the interviewer said old, and she might have agreed, but I don't think she said old. But nonetheless, Michelle McCool got a whiff of that, and she did not like that. She was like, no, I'm making the call to Carano right now.
Oh, she snitched.
Yeah. I mean, this is all alleged. We're all making this shit up. But it's like, at some point during this entire exchange, it was Rusev versus The Undertaker. He goes on TMZ with Lana, and they're, chatting about the match. I think they're trying to, Rusev and Lana have some weird connection with TMZ where they always get the TMZ. TMZ always gets them in trouble, or they got the TMZ plug or something along those lines. And immediately after that, we saw that the match would be changed from Undertaker versus Rusev to Undertaker versus Chris Jericho in a casket match. And then, shortly back after, I think there was probably some backlash behind it or something along those lines.
Right.
But it was changed back to Rusev versus Undertaker. And I know if I'm Chris Jericho, I'm pissed.
Well, I mean, Jericho was probably pissed because he was going to be the only guy in the world that could say that they faced Kenny Omega at the Tokyo Dome and The Undertaker in a casket match. In
1 year. Listen. That's first of all, I think just in general, I don't think Chris Jericho likes to be fucked with, in a way. And not to say that he's like super badass, but I don't think he likes to be fucked with. Is like, all right, make a goddamn decision so I can, plan out my trip accordingly. Like, am I planning for a casket match or am I planning for a Royal Rumble match? Like,
he knows how Vince is at this point. That's his boy.
Listen, I don't know, man. He has shouting matches. But you know what? This is all alleged. It could have gone over smoothly. He could have been like, whatever. You know what? I'm back in the Royal Rumble match. This is an easy payday anyway.
Yeah. But what do you think? And there's been rumors of what's happened. There was a rumor that came out maybe a couple hours ago that The Undertaker didn't think that the TMZ thing was a big deal, and he wanted the match to be changed back. And it's just a very curious case of how they're pushing and pulling with Rusev right now. Mm-hmm. And I would really love to know the story behind what is going on with this guy behind the scenes, because he's one of the most popular characters on TV.
He's still booked as a heel.
Still booked as a heel. I'm not sure when they're pulling the trigger on, and the thing is, like, even in the weeks leading to WrestleMania, he was booked in a place where he could have easily flipped to be a face. Yeah, but he didn't do it.
It still boggles my mind. And this is, I guess, the perfect, as we were talking about, the perfect showing of like how hot and cold they are on Rusev, just because of just them taking them out the match and putting them in the match. But I think just overall in general, in terms of what happened with the situation, I would be happy I would be surprised if Undertaker was just like, yo, just put him back in the match, because I don't think Undertaker really cares. But he could, who knows? But I feel like they, in a sense, are just like, yo, just put him back. It doesn't matter. Like, none of this matters. I don't know. But it's I think
who cares? And that's just that's what Undertaker's saying. Like, who cares about this bullshit if this is true? Right. But even though, like, do you see Rusev possibly like leaving or asking for his release? That's been a big rumor that he's asked for his release a couple of months ago.
I don't think so. Nor do I think if he did, they wouldn't let him go anyway. I feel like they've done that in the past with several superstars. They feel like they can continue to build with. They've done it with Rey Mysterio. I know they did it like a decade back with Carlito. They did it with who? Neville as well. Just Neville is still under a WWE contract by all intents and purposes. But I don't think they would let him go. But I don't know. I don't know if I could see Rusev just being like, I'm out. I feel like Rusev's entire career, he isn't someone who sort of came through the indies and sort of worked his way back out on the other side. He's someone who is completely built and manufactured in the WWE. And while he is a great wrestler, and while I think he could manage to survive outside of WWE, I think for his best interest and for the potential that he has, I feel like I'll say this. He's not in a spot where it's like he's Kurt Hawkins. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. He's not in a spot where he's Zack Ryder, who's actually popular, but still no one gives a damn. People care about Rusev. People care about pushing Rusev. I mean, even indicative by the show, he was in the main event of SmackDown this week. People care about, they care about booking Rusev. So for his best interest, it probably would be smarter just to stay put where he is.
But it says a lot that they put him as really like the top heel of the night on SmackDown this past week, and no one wanted to know. It's fucking up the face reactions for AJ and Bryan because no one wants them to beat Rusev, and they don't want Rusev to go against the faces. So it's like, but I think with the shakeup, and we'll get to this in a second, I hope that it actually makes them flip it because of the on the SmackDown side, the heel side is kind of lopsided in favor of the heels instead of being perfectly even like I see that Raw is. One more thing on No Holds Barred. Do you want to talk about this Nikki Bella John Cena thing?
Wait, before we get off this Greatest Royal Rumble, I have a question. What is Backlash now? Like, what is Backlash? Like, what happens to Backlash? Backlash is literally 8 days later, maybe 9 days. 9 days later, they have a week between, just the Greatest Royal Rumble, which is it's just an ostentatious title in itself for a pay-per-view. Yeah. And then you get Backlash, and we already have 2 matches booked for Backlash, which is Seth Rollins versus The Miz for the Intercontinental Championship. They knew they were doing the shakeup. Which shouldn't be happening, really. Yeah, they knew they were doing the shakeup likely before WrestleMania, so there's got to be some, idea of how they're booking this match. And of course, there's still Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe, which now looks like an interpromotional match is based on, the shakeup. So it makes me kind of question now, like, is Backlash really the ladder of everything? Like, how do
You also have, even though it's not officially announced, you also have Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss in a rematch also. So those are 3 matches announced so far.
Right. So it makes me question, like, what the hell is going to happen? But,
Backlash is usually the rematch show, even though in past years it's been like, wasn't Backlash like really late in the year a couple of years ago?
Yeah, a couple of years ago. It ended up being the post SummerSlam show for SmackDown.
Yeah, it was like the September show. But I have no clue what they're doing. Like, even looking at these matches on paper, it's the same problem they ran into last year with the shakeup with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt, where it was like, this match, for all intents and purposes, should not be happening right now because you don't want to beat a guy to send him away from the territory, so to speak. You don't want to beat Samoa Joe if he so happens to win the IC title at that match. You don't want to send and then Roman Reigns, if he gets the Universal Championship, what does that mean for this match? Is it become a Universal Championship match? I have no clue.
And there's obviously a red belt and a blue belt, and it's not like those belts are going to switch rosters. That would be even more confusing than anything else. So it's kind of crazy how it's sort of proceeding from here. But you know what? I think we'll learn more in the next couple of weeks. What I've learned from the shakeup last year is that the shakeup, while it does freshen up the rosters, it completely confuses everything moving forward, especially until June. Like it was insane how it happened last year, and it looks like it's literally the same thing that's going to happen this year.
Right. So Nikki Bella, John Cena, they called up the.
Listen, I got the alert.
Where'd you get the alert from? WWE.com?
No, that would be wild if they reported that. That would be petty as hell. No, I didn't actually get the alert. But when I opened up Twitter, I just remember seeing it like, oh my God, Nikki Bella, John Cena. It was literally, and I think the thing, the publications that have been covering this, been US Weekly and People Magazine, like it's this real big. And I think that's probably the Bellas, using what connections they've made over the last possibly half of a decade to sort of, in a Kardashian sort of sense and sort of, controlling the narrative of how this sort of breakup went down, because John Cena isn't going to do it.
No,
I mean, if his agent was smart, he would, because it makes John Cena really look like a douchebag from here on out. But Nikki Bella,
there's no way that there's no way John's coming out of this clean. Just knowing who he is, how he is, even if he didn't cancel the engagement, and from all that I've heard, and I think you probably heard it too, like Nikki called it off, he still looks like a prick.
Yeah, easily. I mean, he looked to me, all right. So to me, it was clear from the beginning what's going on, and I don't want to get into relationships. I don't want to get into relationship talk too much on this show, because it's
very problematic. You don't want to piss off our women listeners either.
Listen, but to me, going into sort of situation where someone already has their mind set up on how they want to do things, and sort of hoping that they change their mind, and sort of investing time, it sucks for Nikki, but at the same time, it's also like, this is also what he stipulated from the beginning. Now, the thing I don't agree with John with, and this is very like, I feel like we're getting into like The View now and all this shit. To me, I mean, he proposed to her.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, wow, like you went out on that limb and then you sort of taken it back. To me, there's been all this conversation about sources say, which I think is like JJ Bella or whoever it is. Like, I feel like it's him. But they had a source, I don't know if it came out today or yesterday, and it was like, Brie Bella says it's possibly the best thing that happened to her and the worst thing that happened to her. Because in terms of that, Brie Bella, I don't think she ever wanted to see her sister with John Cena, because the way she felt like she was giving up too much, which is true. I think Nikki Bella wants to have kids. She wants to get married, and John Cena wants none of that. But she was in love with John Cena nonetheless. But now,
knowing that going into it, it's like, sure, you got the moment, but it's like once it's settled and shit, then what? You know what I'm saying? Like, right.
Listen, she hasn't come out completely like scathed. I think just this relationship itself has raised her profile so much, just in general, like to the point where she is now featured in People Magazine and Us Weekly and on covers of things like, and this also with John Cena. I mean, it makes John Cena look like someone who's ready to start a family at that point. So I think they both have benefited from this relationship in terms of just their status and their persona and clout and all that other things. But I think just emotionally wise, to me, it felt like they kind of just, wasted a lot of time with one another.
Absolutely. And it sucks that it really sucks that it happened that way. I don't really like, I feel like these wrestling relationships are so like, they pop up every single day, like big Cass and Carmella and shit like that. Like this is stuff that happens, but this was more of a high profile example of that. Right. But I think that, like with John Cena, it just becomes like, it's like, dude, Just do what you got to do. Continue to have your little threesomes in 6 ways like that. Like just live how you want to live, John.
He's living. Listen, John Cena. Have you seen? I mean, we've seen Total Divas. We've seen Total Bellas. The man practically has a helicopter pad on the top of his house. The man worked. He feels like, in a sense, and he understands. He looks at marriage more as a business than an actual, emotional connection. Which is fair. It's
weird that like John can turn on this character that like loves kids and can be in a movie like Blockers, which I saw on Sunday and I thought was excellent. But it's like he looked the part. Like he was an excellent, more than any of the other cast, other than like Leslie Mann or whatever. I thought he was the best parent character in the movie, like it was so natural to him to have a kid and have a wife. And it's like, yo, he's so good at turning on these characters, but like in real life, I do not want to know what this dude is like, dog.
No, I mean, listen, I think last year, WrestleMania, I think The Miz had the best depiction of him, which is like, it's now a clip going viral on the internet because essentially Miz called all of this. Miz was just like,
Put it Natty.
Huh?
Put it Natty.
Yeah, I mean,
Natty called it too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to me, he sees everything as a business transaction to me, and in terms of this relationship and this marriage. And I think the reason why he didn't want to get married is because he went through a divorce earlier in his career, and that really ruined him. And I think that financially set him back. Maybe, I don't know. He's John Cena, whatever. But he didn't.
I'm crying over the rich guy here. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. He's John Cena. But I think that relationship really made him realize, like, listen, I work very hard for the things I did, and I'll be damned if I give half of it to somebody else. So, I mean, just for Nikki to move into John's house, she had to sign loads of paperwork, which was weird as fuck.
She should have dumped him after that. But we're getting too deep into relationship Twitter here. Let's steer the car back. We're gonna end it there.
Listen,
I just feel like we're getting too deep into this relationship. They're broke up. It sucks.
Let's see how they move on. We'll all move on. It's John Cena will get the chance. He'll say something funny, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the Superstar Shakeup, and this will take the place of our Raw and Smackdown review for the week. I think
not much happened on either show. I mean,
yeah, nothing happened other than this, and I love that when we do these shows where we kind of go off the path and we're able to talk about something completely different and something that really interests us. And we love the reviews, and I know you guys love the reviews too.
Right? They disguised the last two Raws and Smackdowns as like big things, but really nothing happened on this show, which is incredible to me. Between the Raw after WrestleMania and the SmackDown after WrestleMania, which is like, oh, it's the big show, anything can happen, people are going to go crazy, but nothing really happened. And the Superstar Shakeup, literally, if the shakeups didn't happen, nothing happened on. There's really no development on anything.
And there can't be any development on these shakeup shows and on these types of shows because you're building up or you're introducing these new characters. But one thing I want to get to is kind of a rundown of what has changed and what has kind of changed about both shows. And with Raw,
Wikipedia article open, man. I'm ready.
I'll run through let's run through Raw. You could do SmackDown. And so for Raw, they received Bobby Roode, Chad Gable, Zack Ryder, Baron Corbin, Jinder Mahal, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Mojo Rawley, Mike Kanellis. And for tag teams, they got Breezango, The Ascension. They also got on the women's side, they got Natalya and the Riot Squad.
Big Jim, baby.
I know a lot of people were doing the doom and gloom bullshit on Twitter because that's what they love to do whenever there's a big move like this. I do not have a problem with the Raw side of the roster. I don't have a problem with it at all. I think it sets up credible upper mid-card challengers. It defines their mid-card a lot better where you're not having Finn Balor and Seth Rollins floating around with other matches against other people that they shouldn't be wrestling against. And you also define the top of the card where if Roman gets this title back, he will have a bunch of dance partners in a Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, in a Jinder Mahal, in a Baron Corbin. And these are matches that we might have seen the Kevin Owens match before, but for the most part, we haven't seen a lot of them at all.
Now, in terms of that and why I'm 100% fine with the Raw side, I think when you look at the key differences between Raw and SmackDown, Raw is a 3-hour show and SmackDown is a 2-hour show. So the Raw side opens up for a lot of development. And I think a lot of these guys could definitely benefit. I mean, we talk about Jinder Mahal and his reign on SmackDown. In a 3-hour show, maybe there's more context. Maybe there's more things that go on. The Riot Squad, Dolph Ziggler, Baron Corbin, The Ascension, Mojo Rawley, Zack Ryder, all these, Chad Gable, Bobby Roode, all these people that we've sort of asked for more from, but we can't really get it because SmackDown's a 2-hour show. But now they're on this 3-hour show called Raw. There's so much development. They can do a little slow burn. It's the A show. It feels fresh. I think literally everything. I'm fine with everything. That happened on Raw.
And it shakes up the women's division as well. You have Nia, who has a bunch of dance partners after she's done with the Alexa Bliss feud, and you also have Ember Moon, and I think that they play like below Ronda, of course, who's kind of like in her own stratosphere.
Yeah.
But you have Nia Jax and Ember Moon as like the 2 and 3 or the 1, 2, and 3 or whatever of the face side. And then you'll eventually have Sasha Banks and Bayley moving up, I would assume, to a higher position. But it looks like they're being slotted into a feud with the Riot Squad to further kind of extend
the storyline. That should just hit someone in the face.
Slow burn.
Yeah, just someone pick up a chair and throw it at somebody. God damn. How do you feel?
Also did?
I want to ask, how do you feel about the call up of Drew McIntyre? Someone.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, and he actually got a huge pop as well. He was one of the more surprising debuts of this week. I think we all said or predicted that he would skip NXT, and I think it was the best move because by the time he got injured, that upper card at NXT was so defined that by the time he got back, he would have no from that. Like Andrade probably would have been gone, and he is gone. But I love it. I think he got a great reaction. I think that Drew and Roman will have a fucking banger when it's time, and I love slotting him with Dolph Ziggler. In the sense that Dolph will be able to have a big guy that can kind of back up his bullshit and really have a great tag matches with him.
Because I feel like just now I'm way more excited for Dolph Ziggler than I am in the last couple of years. I'll
give it one more try.
Just how this shakes out and how it works. I mean, if he could, stop cutting promos the same way he cuts promos that he's cut for the last 10 years. Yeah. But I think I'm ready to give him another try. I think Baron Corbin got a video package. I think that's a good word. Bobby Roode was featured in the main event of Raw. Chad Gable now split official single star. He's been split from 2 tag teams at this point. He's definitely a single star in the making. And we got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn just to be the brand's like really shit heels. So I think we've done good.
Yeah, and I really think that this defines a lot of things for them. I think one thing I am concerned about with Raw is their tag team division is very, very it's very thin. I think as far as faces that I could see actually getting a really good burn. I see Hardy and Wyatt and Breezango, but on the heel side, you have Ziggler and McIntyre, you have Authors of Pain, you have the Revival, and you have Axel and Dallas. And it's like, I think they'll flip Axel and Dallas to be faces. And I think that they're probably going to flip someone else because it's just kind of unbalanced here.
Right. And then we have the SmackDown side of things.
Right.
Last night we got, Jeff Hardy brought the United States Championship with them to SmackDown. We have Absolution, Mandy Rose, and Sonya Deville, which kind of makes sense now that Paige is, GM of Raw. Samoa Joe was a surprise. We knew someone big was coming over. I think everyone expected either Seth Rollins or Finn Balor, but Samoa Joe. Or Braun Strowman, but Samoa Joe really comes in and really, makes a name for himself. We have Big Cass, someone that we haven't seen in a long time, and showed up at Beta Impact in the main event of SmackDown against Daniel Bryan. It looks like he's engaged in a feud with Daniel Bryan moving forward, which
I think that's going to be great. I didn't have a problem with Big Cass. I had a problem with his matches with Big Show and Enzo. Those are not the best first feuds for him as a heel.
I think this Daniel Bryan feud will work wonders, hopefully. I think Daniel Bryan will do his best to make Big Cass look really, really well. And I think Big Cass is finally against someone that people will cheer and supposed to boo, and maybe they won't feel sort of, I wouldn't say apathetic, but just kind of like not care. They're definitely going to care about this feud. Right. We also see Asuka coming to SmackDown. She was off the show for a huge move. Been off the show for 2 weeks. She shows up on SmackDown and saves Becky Lynch and Charlotte, and now I think the SmackDown's women's division has really sort of filled itself out. We have Absolution, Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville. You got Charlotte, you got Becky Lynch, you got Naomi, you got Asuka, you got Iconics, you got Carmella, you got Lana, you got
Lana? Did you say Lana?
I said Lana. Listen,
that one out. No, not Lana.
Someone's got to eat.
But I think what this did on SmackDown is I think it eventually you got to turn Asuka at some point.
Yeah.
You're gonna get the Charlotte and Asuka part 2, which you should do at SummerSlam, and I think that is the best place to do it. I think you give Asuka the belt eventually, and or have Asuka win Money in the Bank. And I think you have one of those situations happen and have her go against Charlotte at SummerSlam, but you also have you also keep Charlotte and Asuka away from Ronda Rousey. And I think this was the smartest decision that they could have made. It was giving Rousey a chance to make Raw her own, and then having Charlotte and Asuka kind of battle to be the baddest on the Raw side. So I think the Survivor Series will look really, really interesting when it comes to that women's, maybe the interpromotional match or the women's tag match, where we'll have a really good setup that we haven't seen before with any of these women.
Right. We also got the inclusion of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, which has now come to SmackDown. So I believe the club is back on SmackDown. I wouldn't even put them with AJ, man. He doesn't need those guys. But they'll do it. I think they'll do it anyway, because you know what? AJ doesn't need them, but they need AJ.
They need something. Shit.
Cesaro and Sheamus. I think a great coup for SmackDown to Cesaro and Sheamus. You have two guys who have singles potential, and also they're just a great tag team. And to work with people like the Usos, work with the Bludgeon Brothers, work with New Day again, and it's just fresh. I think that completely opens up the SmackDown division. And R-Truth. And then we also had 2 call-ups. The first being Sanity, Eric Young, Alexander Wolf, Killian Dane. It looks like Nikki Cross has been left out of the call-up for now.
Yes, Nikki Cross has been left out. There's a lot of speculation about that, but Dave Meltzer actually said on the, I believe it was the Wrestling Observer Radio, that he feels as though that they're going to do something with Nikki Cross and Shayna Baszler in NXT. I think that there's something to that. As far as having Nikki be there, there aren't. It's the same issue that they fell into when Asuka left. There's a big hole in the heel side, and there's a big hole in the faces that are ready to go against her side, and you just let Ember go. So you have to have you have to have another dance partner for Shayna until Bianca Belair is ready, until Kairi Sane is really ready, and until all the
Dakota Kai or something along those lines.
And I think actually doing something with Dakota Kai with Shayna, because it. Not to go into the NXT spoilers, but there seems to be something that's going on there with those two. So I think that's going to be really interesting. And having Nikki Cross in the mix, it definitely won't hurt, and it gives her a chance to become her own character as well.
Right, and I think that's all well done. I think possibly the biggest coup for SmackDown has now been the call up of Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega, former NXT champions, now on SmackDown, which is where they should be, quite honestly. And I remember I tried calling them a year ago. I said, you know what? A year ago, they should have been on SmackDown. Yeah. Now, after this year of development, after these years of matches, after Andrade Cien Almas has just sort of become,
top 5 in 2018.
Yeah.
Top 1 maybe.
El Idolo. He's really earned whatever he gets from here on. And I'm interested in sort of the feuds that happen from here. And also, of course, The Miz is now coming to SmackDown. I love the announcement of that. I love the announcement of that on Raw when Angle was like, "Hey, Daniel Bryan really wanted you to be on SmackDown, so I did it anyway." And then Miz's reaction was just priceless. It gives Miz more ammo to do the things that he, to feel the way he feels against the GM and feels the way he feels against Daniel Bryan. I think the only sort of issue I hope SmackDown doesn't follow the same sort of pattern it had last year, because I know it's a 2-hour show. We drafted a lot of people last year to that show, and a lot of them weren't used. And we talk about now, we have Ty Dillinger, who's called up last year, wasn't used. Sami Zayn, for the bulk of the year, was pretty much inactive and wasn't used. Rusev, we were talking about, was not used. So there's Luke from the Bludgeon Brothers. I forgot his name.
Oh, Luke Harper. He was injured though.
Yeah, but he was still he still could have been used, man. He wasn't injured. He was just not being used. He lost so much weight. He was prepping to be back on the main roster and just wasn't being used. And I just feel like it would be a shame if any of these stars that just come to SmackDown, which all benefit the show incredibly, would follow the same fate.
I think you have a core 6 that you're going to on SmackDown on the top of the card. I think that's going to be AJ. That's going to be Daniel. That's going to be
Nakamura.
Yeah, it's going to be Joe. I think when it's time, it's going to be Almas at some point. I know a lot of people are concerned about Almas, but it's like
I feel like Randy Orton's probably going to wedge his way into that 6. He's like, no, I'm here too. I'm Randy. Remember?
Yeah, but I know a lot of people are concerned about Almas, but I think it's not a bad thing if he's not shot to the top like we want him to be shot to the top. I think you start him off easy with Sin Cara or Ty Dillinger or R-Truth, and then you put him against the Jeff Hardys. And then, like, you want to build, you don't want to go too fast with him. And what we've seen with Almas is that he can benefit from a slow burn.
Yeah.
He absolutely can. And I think with him and Zelina, we have this idea that it should work like it is on NXT, but it's not NXT. And I think you just give time and he'll be able to be at the top of the card. I think we're going to look back at both of these shows in 6 months or 8 months or really by Survivor Series, and we're going to be able to tell what was a good move and what was a bad move. I think the biggest thing that we're looking out for is, will these shows keep the same quality? Will they retain the same energy that they've had in 2017 and 2018? And I think that's not good. That story is going to be told by SummerSlam or again, by Survivor Series.
Listen, I think SmackDown will be fine with Raw. It kind of really depends on that Universal title match. I don't think Raw can go another year without that championship featured on the show. It makes it, while they have a bunch of new dance partners, that they need that championship featured on that show.
So who do you think will? I know I posed this question on our run sheet, but it's like winners and losers. What show looks the strongest? What show got weaker? I mean, if I was to just call it out right now, I mean, obviously you would say SmackDown won. So I'll say the SmackDown won, but I don't think Raw necessarily lost. No. I think SmackDown looks on paper, SmackDown looks strongest, but I also think Raw looks really strong. I think it's even between the two. I think they're both going to be strong shows. Which show got weaker? I mean, obviously Raw got weaker with the exit of a lot of the top people like Asuka leaving, and you also had, Joe leaving and one of the Hardys leaving and stuff like that. But I mean, I still think they're both really strong shows. I think it was a really solid shakeup, but I think a lot of people are unwhelmed because they expected more NXT call-ups or they wanted.
I think you have so much. You have so much on Raw. You still have the Shield on Raw, which is something that I didn't think was going to happen. You still have, I mean, they won't end up being the Shield, but when Dean Ambrose returns, I think that's going to be someone that, benefits from being out a very, very long time. You have, Dolph Ziggler that they're building. You have Finn Balor. You still have, all these amazing superstars on Raw. I don't think it's a total loss for Raw. I think SmackDown, and it's more succinct. And I talk about the women's roster, and I think the women's roster is the thing that mainly got that boost on SmackDown because it really desperately needed a shakeup. I mean, Natalya, Carmella, all these people have been there for years, and now it's kind of like shaking things. And I think even Raw in itself, it needs to it's beginning to establish itself outside of the 4 horsewomen with that women's roster. And while we still have Bayley and Sasha in the forefront, I mean, they're not the main players in sort of the championship match, which is really, really cool. And I think just the upper cards on both shows, I think this rivals the first draft, the first Raw versus SmackDown draft, where you had The Rock, Hogan, and Angle on SmackDown, and you had Stone Cold, Undertaker, Brock Lesnar on Raw, and things like that. It's like really, really good.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I know I've been known to be almost too optimistic at times about these types of things, but I really don't see a really huge problem with a lot of what happened on these shows, other than them being like completely like non-interesting
right
on this week. But hey, again, this story gets written in 6 weeks to 6 months, so we can't judge it all right now. But I'd say both shows are strong. And I want to say also, like, this is really the last chance for Roman to like get that crowd support. Like there's no one on this show that could realistically take that top spot from him unless he gets injured or something like that. Like this is his last chance to get that groundswell of crowd support so that when he goes into WrestleMania next year against whoever, they're not booing him out the building at 11 o'clock.
Right. Just one quick note on something I just saw popped up in the chat, or at least like something else to wrestle with on the WWE Network. Are you excited for that? Yes,
I am. Shout out to Conrad Thompson and Bruce Pritchard. Conrad's a really good guy. I think that this is going to be a really cool thing on the network. You actually get to see the impressions and the stuff that they do on the show that you can't see on the podcast. You'll be able to see it now because it's all video, I believe.
Yeah, today's topic apparently is WrestleMania 14, so I'm excited to see how this is going to go. But
do they keep the cuss words? Like I'm wondering if they're keeping the cuss words here.
What do you mean, drop top titty?
Chocolate titty.
Drop top titty time? Come on, are we doing that? Or chocolate nipples? Are we doing that? Like, listen, it's an amazing podcast if you have not listened to it.
Super. Actually, you actually had a Twitter question a couple of hours ago about someone who we thought was actually going to be a shoo-in to be like one of the biggest stars. Do you want to get to that when we get to NXT, or do you want to like?
Let's get into NXT now. Then.
Yes. So we actually called out on a couple of our listeners to tell us and rank their top 5 NXT Takeover cards. And last week we talked about it. Last week when we said that NXT is always. We always say with NXT Takeover, that was the best NXT Takeover.
Yeah.
And it becomes like this narrative where it's like the best one is always the latest one because we forget about it. But now we're really, to me, I think we're actually starting to see a top 5 breakout. I think the top, the 2 from this year, to me, they can't lead. And I'll say my rankings in a second, but like these 2 from this year, undisputed top NXT Takeovers of all time.
Let me check if they're in my list. Let me see. I think they are. They may not be. Actually, they are. Both of those from this year are in my list. I parsed through all the responses that we got, and shout out to everybody who responded. Shout out to everyone who contributed to this thing. And I actually made an average about what everybody thinks. So we'll talk about our top 5s, and then we'll talk about what everybody else picked, and then maybe we'll even go through some like duds real quickly.
Oh, I would love to go through. I would absolutely love to go through the duds.
Do you want to start top 5? You want me to start with my top 5?
Go ahead and start.
My top 5. All right. So I have number 5. I actually have NXT Takeover Philadelphia as number 5. Okay. Number 4 is Dallas. Number 3 is Brooklyn 3. Number 2 is New Orleans, and number 1 is Our Evolution.
Okay, all right. That is a respectable list. That is a super respectable list.
I'll say I picked number 1 Our Evolution over NOLA because NOLA, I mean, the distinction that NOLA's gotten over the week or so is because they have 2 5-star matches, as rated by Dave Meltzer, featured on the show. The reason I picked Our Evolution is because I think that's really where NXT sort of changed completely from developmental system to just a full-on like brand in a show. And I think just the incredible things that happened, that incredible Neville versus Sami Zayn match, the introduction of Kevin Owens, I believe also Finn Balor may have debuted on that show as well.
Yes.
It's really, really critical to sort of the build and the takeover of NXT.
Yeah, I think that it was the formative years of the show, and I think with a lot of the NXT takeover shows, it just shows that the booking actually changed. Like the show it was much more than just a weekly show that kind of got over a lot of the developmental talents that would come in. I think with shows like Our Evolution, you started seeing the indie talent and the indie darlings, if you will, start popping up on these shows. And it's a formula that has been carried on all the way to 2018 and it will continue on, I think, for the foreseeable future. I think it's a great formula. Even if you look at WrestleMania, over 90% of that card was NXT people and guys from the indies.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this card, Our Evolution right now, besides, CJ Parker, Simon Gotch, wherever they are at doing their thing, everyone is pretty much...
CJ Parker, he is Juice Robinson and New Japan. Come on.
All right. Then what's Simon Gotch doing?
I don't know. I don't think people like him. Like so.
Oh yeah, I've heard he's an ass, and that's why maybe Sin Cara. All right, you know what? Maybe I'm saying too much. But everybody has been featured on a WrestleMania at some point. It's like it's crazy. What's your top 5?
My top 5 is going to be this might not be so. I'll go ahead and say it. My number 5 was Brooklyn Part 1. I think Brooklyn, the first NXT Brooklyn card, is not only just one of the, and I can say this about all 5 of these. Let's just preface this. These are not only some of the best cards of NXT Takeover. These are some of the best wrestling shows ever, in my opinion. So I'll just say that right there, off the bat. But Brooklyn really lives up to that name. You had a really tremendous undercard there with just like undeniable heat throughout the whole show. I was like, I think that Takeover is one of the biggest shows ever. You had Jushin Thunder Liger on the show against Tyler Breeze in a really good match. You had Apollo Cruz's debut, which was really good as well. You also had Samoa Joe's kind of making his mark known as far as just like beating the fuck out of people. And you also had Bayley versus Sasha Banks in an 18-minute match that really just showed us what
stars changed women's wrestling, to be honest with you.
And then you had a great main event with Finn Balor in a ladder match against Kevin Owens, and I thought it was just amazing to me. Like I really loved that match, and I think it didn't get a lot of love because of I
didn't think they thought the women were going to do that. Kevin Owens, it must have been like, damn, I really got to follow that. Like with the ladder match as well, it's crazy.
But still ended up being a really good match. Number 5 is NXT Brooklyn. Number 4, I say NXT Philadelphia. Really strong card. Again, you had the excellent, and just because it's number 4 does not mean that I'm discounting the fucking 5-star classic between Gargano and Almas. That is still one of my favorite matches of the year. Mm-hmm. But I'm just weighing it against other takeovers. I have to put it there. You had really two really good main event matches there as well. Number 3 was NXT War Games. So as you can see, there's a pattern here. Some of the most recent ones to me are actually becoming the top 5. And of course, the War Games match I thought was tremendous. I love that match a lot. You also had you had some really, really great matches on the undercard there on the War Games card. Let me trying to remember what other matches on the War Games card. I'm like blanking right now.
Oh my god, I think there was Johnny Gargano versus
It was Gargano and Pete Dunne. That's that. No. Gargano Pete Dunne was
Gargano wasn't on the card. Okay, maybe I was thinking of one.
It had Aleister Black and Velveteen Dream.
That was an amazing match. That was incredible. Yes.
It had that. I don't know why I just blanked like that. It also had Cien Almas winning the NXT Championship, which I love that they do things like this. They do title switches before the main event, and this is another show that did that as well.
Yeah, easily.
And it didn't hurt that it didn't hurt Almas's win. He had a great match with Drew McIntyre. I really fucking love that match as well. Let's see. What was that? Number 3, number 2. I put R Evolution. So that was my number 2, mm-hmm. And number one, you had NXT New Orleans.
Yeah, that's a solid breakdown. I feel like the general, all those were named by people, who submitted to this thing, and all those are incredible. Now, if I want to go to the public, shout out to everyone who contributed. Like, it was fucking incredible. What we have for the top one that everyone picked was New Orleans. So everyone was just like, New Orleans is one of the best shows, one of the best NXT shows. It's fresh in everybody's mind. It may still be. The second one was the original NXT Brooklyn. So NXT Brooklyn, that featured Sasha versus Bayley and, everything you aforementioned. The third one was War Games. The fourth one was NXT Dallas. Surprisingly not. NXT Dallas featuring Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn. Yeah. A lot of people went for NXT Dallas. But the thing that I got to argue here. The thing about that show is that, like, even if you discount or not discount or look past the obvious Shinsuke Nakamura match, which is amazing 5-star match,
You had an okay Oscar and Bailey match, which I thought they had a better match in Brooklyn.
Yeah, they did.
And you also had Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, which really wasn't like, I gave that maybe like a low 4, maybe 3.5 stars. Like, I didn't think that was a really good main event at all.
I thought the opener was hot. They had American Alpha versus the Revival. I thought that was good. Austin Aries versus Baron Corbin. I'm not really Austin Aries fan. Yeah, so I'm just like, it's really the same for me. But I mean, people picked it fourth. It's a NXT Dallas. It got recognition, and I think the fifth one that everyone picked was NXT Philadelphia. So I mean, there's
Our Evolution.
No, our Evolution would come actually after that would be Chicago, NXT Chicago. After that would be our Evolution,
that's a one-match show.
After that would be our Evolution in Brooklyn for third, and then after that we don't really even need to get into it. But yeah, I think what, NXT, we picked the best ones they had. I think we made good decisions, but NXT has really had, just looking back on it, a lot of like duds. Like, I mean,
yes,
keep it
100. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it in just terms of, and I don't go after the first NXT Takeover arrival, because that one and stuff. I didn't like the main event of Neville versus Bo Dallas. No, Bo Dallas. The arrival. I think they Takeover came on after NXT arrival.
Oh yeah. You're right.
But man, we've had shit. Which was the one I did? I mean, Takeover Respect. No, I didn't. I didn't hate that show.
That show was mostly tag matches. Asuka's debut, I believe, and you had the really good Iron Woman match between Bayley and Sasha. To me, it was a one-match show, and it actually the show frustrates me more in hindsight, because it was never referenced when this happened, but Samoa Joe turning heel happens a little bit after this show.
Yeah.
They never trace it back to Finn Balor being a dickhead and taking the win against Baron Corbin and Rhino in that match, even though he was injured.
Man, you're completely fucking right. There was also two takeovers, main evented by Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens. Neither match had the zeal that it had when they both came up to the main roster, or even on the indies years ago, just because of, I think the first one, Sami Zayn was injured.
Yeah.
Sami Zayn was injured in a match with John Cena a couple days before the actual match, and it just kind of changed the entire complexion of the match itself. Also had Baron Corbin versus Bull Dempsey. Remember the Bull Dempsey era?
Oh, man.
Bull.
The Dark Ages. The Dark Ages.
Featured a match, Hideo Itami versus Tyler Breeze. I'm not sure if this was when Hideo came back or debuted, but it would get into the sort of series, and then it would follow up on the NXT Takeover Unstoppable, the following one.
No, that wasn't when he debuted.
Unstoppable was when he got injured.
Yeah, Unstoppable was when he got injured. Can we just say that NXT Unstoppable, I think May 20th, we're almost coming up on 3 years of it. May 20th, 2015 that was the moment, I think, that changed Hideo Itami's his trajectory forever. Yeah. I think that shoulder injury that he suffered in the weeks before the show actually aired, they did a video package, or not a video package, but a backstage pre-tape where it shows Kevin Owens appearing when Itami's injured, and it became this mystery: who injured Itami, who injured Itami, and that was never answered or followed up on. NXT doesn't do that often. But right. Itami, who attacked Itami, was never answered, and he lost without that storyline, he lost all of his fucking. He lost all of his heat.
You know what I think it was, though, because he was out for a long time. It was like over a year, and usually with these shoulder injuries, it doesn't last for that long. But I think in terms of the way it was rehabbing, it just wasn't going well. And I think in that time, you saw Kevin Owens immediately called up to the main roster. Finn Balor also called up, or eventually called up.
He was gone for the whole Finn Balor title reign, over 200.
Wow. Yeah, he definitely was.
For the whole thing. Came back and got injured again. Listen. So Finn had already been called up.
I posed a question on Twitter last night, and I said, so what's the verdict on Hideo Itami? Because he was featured in the 205 Live main event last night. I think it was him and Tozawa losing to Lince Dorado and Grand Metalik, which is crazy. But it's kind of been really the fall. I mean, Hideo Itami was one of those guys who was really heralded when he came in, when the first sort of wave of the independent guys. He was one of the first big signings. They had Hulk Hogan go to Japan and sign him. Like, Hulk Hogan was there in the WWE, and he went over to Japan and he was like, listen, Kenta is going to be the next guy. And it just never followed up. It just kept being bad luck after bad luck, and eventually got called up to 205 Live, which is great. But he never really gained the steam there. And I think probably his last breath in NXT was just that. I think he had that match against Bobby Roode before he left. He had a NXT title match, and I think after
he also had a match against Aleister Black.
I think a weird statistic that was brought up was, in his entire 3 years in NXT, he probably had like 4 or 5 takeover matches, which is insane. People in less time have had more. It's just crazy how long he's been injured. He got injured with his shoulder, and then I think he had another injury with his orbital bone or something along those lines. But it's just crazy the way it sort of worked out for him.
It's crazy and really sad. I think I had a lot of high hopes for him, but then I started seeing the matches, and I was like, he's not really like.
Where does he go from here? Should he peace out? Like, or are we peacing out now? Like,
no. If he goes to Japan, what's he going to be in Japan? He's injured. He'll have to work a harder style. He'll definitely won't be at the top where like guys like Tanahashi. If New Japan takes him, he won't be where like Tanahashi and those guys are. He'll be jobbing to Adam Page.
Right. One of the responses was, he'd be a tag match guy in Japan.
I absolutely agree. I agree.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. Listen, other takeovers, notable takeovers. I mean, we've had some great matches, but some of these takeovers have been one match cards. So I don't think everyone needs to.
But I do want to mention like I think a lot of people get the idea that, okay, we always say every takeover is better than the last. But I think in hindsight, a lot of these shows, the top of the card was like a log jam for 7 consecutive shows.
The Balor, Joe, Rude, Nakamura era.
Yes. And it was and it's like, we look at the 2015, 2016 shit, and some 2017 era, that was a really weird period because you had Finn Balor, who wasn't always on the TV show, which isn't a bad thing, but he literally almost never defended the title. Nakamura would disappear for weeks on end.
Oh, yeah.
Joe was probably really the only consistent guy that was on TV. And then you had Nakamura in the title match 4 times in a row in 2016 to 2017 before he actually got called up. And it was like, I look back on that era of NXT with not even just like resentment, but it was like, man, like they were still figuring it out, even though we thought that these shows were like fucking excellent.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, just lack of development on the top of the card, because you run through these sort of main events and you can see it on Wikipedia. You can see it's literally like a baton pass. It's like Finn Balor, Joe, Finn Balor, Joe, Nakamura, Rude. And then it finally sorts of bit to change up from here on out. But I hope we continue to get that sort of, a little bit of the main event and things becoming a little bit more,
I think the core top of the card roster on NXT is going to be excellent. I love having Undisputed Era at the top. I think they're great where they are. I think Johnny Gargano and Ciampa is great. I think Aleister Black, you give him some new dance partners. You have EC3, you have Ricochet, you have Velveteen. This is going to be a really great era in NXT where it's like, you're not going to have that log jam of talent that's just basically clogging up the roster. And even though I do think Aleister Black is going to have a very lengthy reign with that title, and I'm thinking like Finn Balor-esque reign, I think he'll have some really great feuds.
I agree. I think we've got a lot to look forward to, and hopefully we don't have to do this in 3 years and run through sort of the same issues that we had before.
Absolutely. So thanks to everybody who who sent in their thoughts of their best NXT takeovers, and everyone who sent in their thoughts on where Hideo Itami's going. We really love to hear you guys' feedback. So anytime you listen to one of the episodes, just hit us up on Twitter at OGJohnny5 and at Meelz TV. Let us know how you feel about the show, and we'll read it on the air here. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I mean that's the end of the show, man.
That's the week. That's the week in the A show. It's a big
in the A show. Listen, continue. Go ahead.
We have the roster set. We have everything set up. We have everything that everything's settled with the rosters on Raw and Smackdown, and we have NXT going forward, and we have the Greatest Royal Rumble and Backlash coming up. What do you see happening? Like, where do you see us going into the summertime? Because usually the summertime is a down period in the WWE, but realistically with these rosters, we shouldn't have one. But do you think that
we're getting a down period? We're 100% getting a down period. Nothing happens until the month before SummerSlam, so it's kind of I think we'll get a lot of squashes leading up. I think with a lot of these new people on Raw, they're going to have a lot of we get these squash matches back. We'll get a lot of essentially everything starting over. So it's like a slow build to everything. And we may have a few, notable matches and things like that. And, we get the best of both worlds now, apparently, with that stupid song they've been promoting all over the damn network and TV. We get, Raw and SmackDown on the same, pay-per-view. So hopefully that makes things a little bit better, makes things a little bit more urgent. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll get a lull until Money in the Bank, and then after Money in the Bank, it'll definitely be a lull until the month before SummerSlam.
I will say there are a couple guys that I would say to look out for come in the coming weeks on both shows. Mm-hmm. I'll say watch out for Finn Balor. I think the top of the card is very set, and I think it's very clear, and he doesn't have to fight for space against Samoa Joe and Braun and those people. I think it's very clear that he's going to be slotted in that top of the card. I'd say on the SmackDown side, obviously look out for Shinsuke Nakamura. I really think they're going to give him a prolonged and long run with that title if and when he wins it. Mm-hmm. And I think he'll win it in Saudi Arabia. And I think that on the women's side, I think Ronda Rousey's she's really gonna step up. I think she's gonna be like the top face on that side. But I'd say the way that they're setting up Ember Moon is very promising as well on Raw. And on SmackDown, I think Asuka's gonna end up really taking over that show as well.
I think it's gonna be, SmackDown has a stacked roster. Expect a lot of 4.5-star matches. That's all I'll say.
I hope so, because they've had a really great roster a couple years ago, and it was like toward the end it kind of got stagnant. We started seeing James Ellsworth matches and shit.
Listen, Daniel Bryan is back, which is good. It does good because it's someone like, I think really SmackDown, when they had Cena, I thought they benefited a lot, and every time Cena would leave, I thought it was a detriment to the show because I think Cena adds a lot to the show. They essentially have a full-time Cena sort of moving through this entire roster, and that's with Daniel Bryan. So I expect things to happen and people to care, hopefully. But let's see how things go from there on out.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that is the end of the A show. Thanks you guys for listening. We'll be back next week with more on the latest and greatest and wrestling and pro wrestling and literally everything in between. Check us out on RNC Radio Live on Twitter, and we'll have all of the updates on our playlist and stuff like that. We just put out a really dope TRL themed playlist and visual playlist. Meelz, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Listen, TRL, we did the deluxe version. I did a playlist of a couple of years ago with like 30-something songs of just the songs that defined the 1999 through, I guess, 2008 or something, but that type of era. We beefed it up to 100 songs of just nostalgia, just pure nostalgia, like the things you're ashamed of listening to, like Livin' La Vida Loca, and all the things that you feel hype listening to, like maybe you forgot about Dre or Tearing Up My Heart by NSYNC or I Want It That Way, something that like killed you. But we have that playlist. It's amazing. The video playlist, just a trip. Just plug it into whatever HDMI cord you have and just take a trip. Like, it's really, really amazing. Check out those playlists.
Yeah, and we also have a new podcast as well. We have RSBN that airs every Friday. We also have the Perfect Play podcast with my man Jay Melendez. We call him Huey. I don't know why he calls himself Huey. You can ask him that on Twitter.
Listen, that's Huey, baby. Come on. I don't ask why you call yourself Johnny Five, baby. Come on.
It's a great story. I'll tell it one day.
All right.
But we also have RNC Radio with myself and Josh Pease. We talked about Coachella last week, and we're going to be ringing that up for the second weekend of Coachella. And we also have the Lookout podcast, which returned for the season finale of season 1 with myself as a guest and Perfect Legend, who is a pro competitive gamer, talking about Dragon Ball FighterZ. Meelz and Jeff did an excellent job on that, so definitely check that out when you get a chance. It just dropped today. And you can check out everything else. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on SoundCloud at RNC Radio Live. And you can also subscribe to us, and we have the links on Twitter as well. So until next time, we will see you guys next week on The A Show. Peace out.
Peace out. Have a Rusev Day.